Imagine you were suddenly in charge of an empire that was expanding faster than anyone could have ever predicted. Well, that was the reality for the second Caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab. So today, we're going to dive into his absolute masterclass in administration.
So this was the huge question Umar was facing. His time as leader saw this period of just unbelievable expansion. You've got this massive, super diverse new state just popping up, and you need a system to hold it all together, to keep it from falling apart.
And if you look at the historical sources, they all pretty much say the same thing. The conquests themselves were what drove the creation of all these new institutions. Umar basically had to build the ship while he was sailing it, dividing the entire state into provinces just to make it manageable and to keep track of its income.
Now, to really get to the heart of how he governed, we don't need to look at some dense, complicated legal text. Nope. All we need is a single, really powerful conversation that happened in the holiest city of all.
Alright, so picture this. It's the Hajj, the annual pilgrimage. And you gotta understand, this wasn't just a religious event. This was the one time a year when all the governors from all over the empire had to show up and meet with the caliph. And it's here that Umar meets Nafi, the man he'd put in charge of Makkah.
So Umar just cuts straight to it. He's not just making small talk here, asking who was left in charge of Makkah, the valley, while Nafi was gone. No. This is a test. It's a question about his judgment, about how he runs things at the highest level.
Nafi gives a simple one-name answer: Ibn Abza.
Now for the caliph, who pretty much knew every important family and leader, this name just doesn't register. He's thinking, who on earth is Ibn Abza?
And then comes the bombshell. The man put in charge of the most sacred city in all of Islam. He wasn't from some powerful tribe. He wasn't from a noble family. He was a mawla, a freedman, a former slave.
I mean, you can just imagine the shock in Umar's voice. In a society where your family name, your lineage, was often everything, this was a pretty radical move. So he challenges his governor, right? He wants to know the thinking behind this.
And Nafi's answer is, well, it's revolutionary. It has absolutely nothing to do with status or wealth or family connections. The reason he picked him was pure, simple qualification. Ibn Abza knew the Quran inside and out, and he was an expert in the complicated laws of inheritance. And get this, Umar doesn't get angry, he doesn't fire him. Instead, he completely validates the decision by quoting the Prophet Muhammad himself. The message here is just so profound. Real status, true honor, it doesn't come from your family tree. It comes from your knowledge of God's revelation.
So what we're seeing here is the foundation of a true meritocracy. That story about Ibn Abza, that wasn't some one-off thing. It was the blueprint. The idea was that leadership had to be earned through skill and character, not something you were just born into.
Okay, so that's the principle. But how did this idea of merit and, practical leadership actually play out across this huge, sprawling empire?
All right, so this chart kind of gives us a bird's eye view. You can see every province had its own special strategic role. Al-Madeenah, that was the nerve center, the political capital. Yemen was the source of manpower, the guys who filled the ranks of the expanding armies. Bahrain was the economic engine, bringing in crucial money from taxes like the Kharaj and Jizya. And then you have Egypt and Syria, which were the active, expanding frontiers of the state.
And when you zoom in a little closer, you see just how specific this all was. Al-Madeenah wasn't just some capital city. It was the command center where Umar himself was the governor, and he'd appoint top guys like Ali ibn Abi Talib to fill in when he was away. Yemen wasn't just a place on a map. Its tribes were the actual backbone of the armies pushing into Syria and Egypt. The money from Bahrain, managed by people like Abu Huraira, literally paid for the state's operations. And Makkah, as we already saw, was the essential yearly meeting spot where every single governor had to check in and report back.
And what's so fascinating is that this was not a one-size-fits-all kind of government. Just look at the difference between Egypt and Taif. In Egypt, which was a frontier province, the governor Umar ibn al-As had direct orders to keep the army as a professional fighting force. He was told, don't let them get distracted by farming. But then you look at a stable internal region like Taif, and the focus was totally different. There, it was all about boosting agriculture, honey fruits, you name it, to make sure the region was prosperous and stable. It's just super practical, tailored leadership.
So, this all begs the question, right? Where did this incredible idea of leadership, one based on merit and customized for local needs, where did it actually come from?
Umar wasn't just sitting around inventing a new political philosophy from scratch. Not at all. He was directly putting into practice the lessons he had learned from the Prophet, the core teachings of his faith. The source of his genius in administration was really divine guidance.
And you can find that guidance so clearly right here in the Quran. It says, Allah will exalt in degree those of you who believe and those who have been granted knowledge. I mean, this verse gives you the entire spiritual foundation for that story of Ibn Hamza. It's an explicit teaching. What raises you up in God's eyes is your belief and your knowledge.
So, at the end of the day, what the Prophet did was establish a totally new way of thinking about leadership. It wasn't about who your dad was or how much money you had. It was about what you knew and how you conducted yourself. Caliph Umar took that exact paradigm and used it to build the administrative foundation of an empire that would shape the world for centuries.
And that leaves us with a really powerful question, doesn't it? For our world today. In a world that is still so often obsessed with status and influence and connections, this 1400-year-old example really challenges us to think again about what we should truly value in our leaders.